Okay, so let's take a look at intercepts and how we find intercepts. Let's first establish, and this ties directly with where I left off with the first video in the quadrants, is that this idea of intercepts. And I really can't emphasize enough in a face-to-face class, I recommend that students write this again and again. And every time you write the problem, I really recommend it. And that is that when you're working these problems, if they ask you for the x-intercept, what I would do is I would write down x-intercept so your brain's processing it. So this basically is saying the x, if I have an x-intercept or if I want an x-intercept, then let y be equal to 0. Or vice versa. If I want to find a y-intercept, so I would write this down, y-intercept, then let x be equal to 0. So, because I remember the thing is that you need to remember this. There are ways visually to be able to determine this. I mean, obviously, if you're in the middle of a test and you're working a problem and you're like, oh man, I can't remember what I do. Well, why don't you draw an ordered pair? That ordered pair right there, I don't really know for sure what x is because I don't know how far I've gone over on the x-axis, but I can tell you one thing I do know. I do know for sure that my y value is 0. So when I'm finding an x-intercept, y is always equal to 0. Vice versa if I go to the y-axis. Once again, I know I have an ordered pair. I don't really know for sure, like, is that 2, is that 3, is that 4? But I can tell you one thing, the x value is 0. So if I want to find a y-intercept, x is always equal to 0. So you can kind of do like a visual way of memorizing that problem. So how does this correlate? Well, one of the quickest ways for us to be able to graph things is to find the intercepts. Obviously there's slope-intercept form that you can do, but when we come across a situation, like whether I be in slope-intercept form, or whether I'm in standard form, sorry about that. Well, either one of those, the reality is this, is that if I wanted to graph this using my intercepts, I would say, well, I want my x-intercepts. So that means I'm going to let y be equal to 0. So I look at this equation, I say, okay, well, let's do that. 0 equals negative 3x plus 7. And I solve that equation for x. So minus 7, those cancel. I get negative 7 is equal to negative 3x. I divide by negative 3, I divide by negative 3, and I find out that when my y value is 0, my x value is 7 over 3. Because in this case here, x was equal to negative 7 over, positive 7 over 3. So that would be my x-intercept. Vice versa, if I wanted to find my y-intercept, I would say my y-intercept, then let x be equal to 0. And so I would do the same thing, except now I'd say y is equal to negative 3 times 0 plus 7. Well, y is equal to, this turns into a 0. That gives me 7. Excuse me, let me erase that parentheses on the line. So y equals 7. So my y-intercept would be 0 for the x and 7 for the y. So if I wanted to plot this, I would go to 0, 7, draw a dot. That's my y-intercept. I would go to, okay, well, I had to figure out what 7 over 3 is. So I could pull my calculator out, and I could say 7 divided by 3, and it's going to convert it. So it'll be about 2.33. And I don't think I made any mistakes on that. So subtract, divide, nope. So 2.33, something like that. And then I would take my straight edge. I'll just take my straight line. Let me get my colors right. Red. And I would just connect those dots. And that would be the equation of the line of that equation. Well, in standard form, life gets even easier because you already have it broken down into, it's not simple, you don't have to solve as much. So we still start off and we say, I want to find the x-intercept, so I'm going to let y be equal to 0. So I have 9x plus 8 times 0 equals 72. Well, 8 times anything goes away, so I get 9x equals 72. Whether or not you need to see it, you divide by 9, you divide by 9, you get x is equal to 8. That means that your x-intercept occurs at 8, comma 0. Pretty straightforward. We go to our y-intercept. So we write on our paper, y-intercept, then let x be equal to 0. So same thing, 9 times 0 plus 8y is equal to 72. Then 9 times 0 goes away. I get 8y is equal to 72. I divide both sides by 8. And I get y is equal to 9. So my y-intercept occurs at 0, 9. So I can plot these points. So 0, 9 would be right there. 8, 0 would be right there. I take my straight line, and I connect my dots. And there is the graph of the equation 9 plus 8y equals 72, using my x-intercepts and y-intercepts. So I've kind of tied two things in there, like how do I find the intercepts, and then how do I graph it using the intercepts. All right, that'll wrap up our intercepts and using them to graph. We've got some different angles with different intercepts, and we'll give you a chance to take a look at those also.